But our first speaker today is Shyamala Prayaga, who will be talking about a critical topic for our industry, and that's accessibility and user-centered design. So Shyamala is a user experience evangelist at Amazon. She has 15 years of experience in the UX domain with many companies, including AOL, Coney, and Yodlee. If my pronunciation of that is wrong, forgive me. She has also been instrumental in helping many startups streamline their UX processes and practices. And as a passionate designer, Shyamala has been very active in the UX community, building and spreading global awareness of all things UX. So please welcome Shyamala.
Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all here, and I'm really happy to see and excited like how people are excited about usability and user experience. So my topic today is about accessibility. So before I start, I just want to understand from you, like, what do you understand about accessibility? Human rights and designing for everyone. So when you say everyone, what do you mean?
Able to use that product, who are qualified to use that product.
Okay. Anyone else? No?
Universal design?
Universal design? Okay. Can you elaborate more?
So not designing just for accessible people, but designing so that everyone in the community is better for everyone.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Well, historically, accessibility has been a threat of litigation and tax for the deaf.
Okay. Yeah. So I like that, and I'll come to it. So yeah. People have a different kind of understanding about accessibility. Accessibility is only for developers to worry about, and they are the one who have to make things accessible. But that is not the case, and that is what I'm going to talk about today, like how important accessibility is and how we can integrate it in the user-centered design process. So let's start. So basically, accessibility is defined as designing products, services, irrespective of age, ability, and situation. It's pretty close to what we talk about in terms of usability. Like in usability, we say making things usable for everyone. But then, we make things usable, but we don't make them, usable for everyone, irrespective of the situations or abilities. And that is where we are failing. So this is how experts define accessibility. They say accessibility is about designing interfaces so that more people can use it in more situations, right? But then I have a different definition about accessibility and disability in general. So the first thing I would say is functional limitations. So functional limitations are the one where, we were talking about inclusive design. So functional limitation, covers everything like visual, like people have vision related problems, or it could be cognitive, it could be psychological, it could be any such thing. Everything which is to do with physical part is functional limitation. But accessibility does have another part to it, and that is what I call situational, and this is what we never think about. Situations can also be, limiting us to use the technology or to use the products. Example, like if I'm really stressed out and my brain is not really working, I may not be able to concentrate on really critical critical things or tasks. Or let's say I'm trying to use my mobile application in a bright sunlight where I don't have enough contrast. So I have some sort of visual, vision related problem. So those kind of things comes into situational limitations. It could be more. Talk about it in terms of like we make our products using JavaScript all the time. Due to security reason, if JavaScript is not working, then what happens to our product? We never think about it. We design all the things dynamic all the time, but then these products are not usable when JavaScript is not working. So these are the situations. Situations could be more than this. I'm just trying to, keep it short. So when we are designing, we also have to think about the situational limitation equally as we think about disabilities and functional limitations. So now let's see and understand how disabled people use technologies so that, we can get more idea. So these are the screen readers which you see, and screen readers are basically, you know, the developers' effort, which all the developers try putting the alt tags, title tags, text tags in their HTML. That is for the screen readers, so that people who have vision-related problem can see and use the interface equally. And then we have voice input devices, which people use, especially, you know, who cannot see or who cannot read. For them, it's easy to, you know, go through the voice inputs and commands and try to use the interface. And then we have alternate keyboards, which are there. Basically, you know, this is used by people who have some sort of motor control disabilities. And then we have mouse alternatives like trackballs. Again, this is for fine motor, you know, related issues. And okay, so now this is about the disability. So, you know, there are so many things which we have to think about and talk about when we are designing. It's not only about the platform, like, okay, I'm designing a mobile application and it is for iOS. But we have to think, like, when we are designing it for iOS, how do people who have any kind of limitations use it? How do we cater to these kind of, you know, alternate technologies which are there? So that is really important. And there comes the responsibility of UX designer, like what we have to do, and we have to start thinking about it here in the user-centered design process. So as I mentioned, it's not the responsibility about developers that they have to just code a couple of title tags, alt tags, and then think like, okay, we have done our part of the accessibility and the products are accessible. But it's way more than that. So user-centered design is all about, you know, different processes and including users in our design life cycle. So how do we do that? We include them in our research phase. We talk to them. We do cognitive analysis. We do research in terms of like interviews, surveys, questionnaires. We create personas. So we are involving users right in the beginning. And then when we are designing, during that phase also, we are creating some sort of user journey maps before we start designing, like, okay, how would my user's journey be when they are using the interface? And then when we are involving them during the usability testings and validations of our design. So we are still involving our users throughout the process, right? So how can we incorporate accessibility in user-centered design process? So I would say accessibility is a subset of user-centered design process in itself, because we are including users in our design process. So why can't we include disabled people as well? And why can't we include the limitations and situational and functional everything there? So why do we even want to do that? Why do we care about accessibility? Because, you know, if we do that, any company who is involving accessibility into their design life cycle and also into their product life cycle are having increased usability, have more market share, and have audience reach. They improve the efficiency of the product to be used in any kind of circumstances, situations. And then, of course, the return of investment. And then we have the social responsibility towards the society. So we are also catering to that. Now, how does accessibility fits into user-centered design process? So I spoke a lot. Now I want to understand from you, like, what do you think? What should we do? No? No guess?
Yeah, we're going to take it here.
Okay.
In a recent project that I worked on, we had a really broad spectrum of users, and so we actually used a system. It was kind of an off-the-shelf system, and used a lot of their components that had accessibility baked in. Things like, contrast and screen readers and all of that were kind of baked into those components that we were designing with. So that was one way that we used that. But I think another way can be just strategy from the very beginning and making the designers aware of accessibility needs of the users and kind of planning those throughout the design process.
Right? Yeah. I saw a couple of hands there. Yeah.
Making it part of the process, visibility and buy-in from your company. So I have it on my roadmap with my manager for accessibility. Everyone knows I'm really passionate about it, so I'm going to be working on a set of best practices included, and what that list you had of all the different benefits I'll be presenting that. So let's just start with a proposal to improve what we have. I work at the Seattle Times, so it should be for everybody.
Okay.
Okay, I've been using the technique that I have asked the designers and developers for one day or for a certain period of time, use their own services with the tools that the disabled people use. So with the screen readers and so on, and try to do the tasks that they are supposed to do in that. It's very much eye-opening, especially if they can go and do that with a person who really have no alternatives.
Okay.
To create the awareness in the beginning and then incorporate the validation phase and
Right.
the people that more kind of broad spectrum of people.
Cool. Good.
Is anybody here from the accessibility discipline at Microsoft? So I'm speaking for you. You could speak instead. Ah, you're here. Do you want to talk about the kits? You know, where you, because, I mean, I don't know how they've evolved. Yeah, you want to talk about them? I think that'd be cool.
I mean, with the UX labs, we have a kit called Inclusive Kit that has all the devices. Most of the devices with people with special needs uses, like color contrast issues with the different color vision issues and mobility issues, and as well as hand devices. And not only the computers, different devices of the keyboards. Having access to, like what Anna is saying, that having access to all these devices and visualize or maybe bring the people how they use it, and that build empathy to the designers and the developers and so on like that.
Cool. Great. So I see a lot of good things here.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
So with the kit you're talking about, is that the thing that has like the glasses you put on and then you see what somebody with decreased vision sees? And I remember the gloves that show you like decreased sensory. Yeah, that my experience is designers are very empathetic people, obviously. And so having them actually be able to in some way kind of see or experience a variety of disabilities temporarily makes a big impact.
Cool. Good. So I have a lot of good answers here, and I would say, like, yeah, some of those things which you have said is really good. You are doing a lot of good initiatives from your side, but there is more to that. Okay, and I would say this is how you can actually, integrate accessibility into your different phases of user-centered design. So when it comes to analysis phase, when you're working on user groups, personas, and scenarios, so think about the situational limitations and functional limitations right from that point. Okay. So example, when you are creating user groups, think about, the demographics, the age-related disabilities of people, because disability is not only by birth, it could be age-related as well. So think about all the different kind of, statistics and age-related disabilities, and think about, the frequency of use, like information and the memory loss and those kind of things into the consideration. And then think about the hardware. So I really heard a very good answer here. Like, you guys are thinking about different kind of disabled devices, the assistive technologies which we have. So, think about the hardwares, like how we can use those things and how, those will limit or will provide us the opportunities. And then definitely the softwares like information on visual impairments and how they will use the product and services. So example is, let's say we are thinking about a user's experience end to end. So we know like what kind of people will be using our products. So when we know that, we also know like people could be, some people could be having some sort of vision related disabilities or some sort of, physical disabilities, like they're not able to access the device from one hand, or anything could be there. So think about those things as well when you are designing and when you're thinking about your user groups. So does that make sense? Okay. The second thing is personas. We create personas, we love personas, we do it all the time. And these are not fictitious personas which we create, these are based on some of the research which we might have done. So when we are working on personas, can we not think about, disabled personas as well? Like, okay, there are people who might have some sort of limitations, and this could not be the limitations like I'm aged and I'm not able to use the technology or something like that, but it could be beyond that point as well. Like this person has some sort of limitation, and then, is not able to use the product in a situation like noisy environment, and then she uses assistive technologies. So when we are thinking about these things and when we are designing keeping in mind this persona, we would definitely be making our products accessible. And then when we are working on scenarios and user journeys and storyboards and those kind of stuffs, so we can think about the personas, and we can think about how that entire scenario looks like for a disabled person. So not only thinking about a normal person, but also thinking about the disabled person and trying to create a user journey or a user story around that would help. Because when we start doing that, we will be seeing the product from their eyes and then trying to design it. So, if we are not catering to some of the accessibility related issues during our design phase, we may fail. So it could be related to color, it could be related to any alignments or any thing which we are making, the proximity of the button and those kind of things as well. But these scenarios can help you think about those as well. And then how can we use accessibility in the design phase? So definitely, when we are developing the conceptual model, mental models and navigation design and all, we can think about the functional limitations. Like what happens if JavaScript is not working? How does the interface look? And then also thinking about, all the different standards which we have spoken about, like there are web content accessibility guidelines, there is section 501 something, and there are so many different kind of accessibility guidelines in there. So during the design phase, when we are designing, we have to think about these. What is the contrast ratio I am using? Is that as per the accessibility, the font size, the background color, the contrast and everything else? And then comes your evaluation phase, and during the evaluation phase, we can definitely think about accessibility during a heuristic evaluation, during a usability testing, and during a design walkthroughs. So during design walkthroughs, we can, rather than just doing a normal walkthrough, we can also, incorporate accessibility related issues into it and try to do it. And then we can do walkthroughs specifically for accessible people, situations, or both. And then the usability testing, we can include disabled people and then do the accessible usability testing, or we can do the usability testing in real situations and scenarios, how people will be using the product. So let's say like people drive and they use a product. So let's try doing a usability testing in that situation and see like how would things look that way. Not calling them to our usability lab and saying like, okay, do it and just mimic and just imagine and those kind of things. But what if we went there in that situation and tried testing like how it would look for them? So it will really help us. So that's all I have. So do you have any questions?
There's so many types of people to account for. So how do you go about selecting which constraints you're going to focus on, or which ones are deal breakers or must happen to pass a product as usable? Because it's so vast. And how do you maintain focus?
Right. So the first and foremost thing is you need to understand what kind of product we are designing for. So let's say if it is a voice-based technology which we are designing, like Siri or Amazon Echo or something like that. So the first rule is like obviously people who have any sort of disability of like hearing disability will not be able to use it. So we have to discount those people there right in the beginning. Like we know those are not the right kind of people for our testing. But then we need to think about others, like how about people who have who does not have any such listening problems. So we have to include those. So especially you need to know your target audience and demographics before you are designing that. So example, let's take like we are talking about Surface. Okay, so Surface is so easy to use, it's like touch based, so everyone would want to use it. But then it does have some limitations, right? How will people who have, I don't know if like it is accessible or has some sort of like assistive technology capabilities, I'm not sure of that. But then if not, we have to think about it, like, okay, will people who have vision related problems or some sort of problems will be able to use it, because it's like a touch screen thing completely, right? So you need to think about those in the beginning.
Other questions in the audience? So I got one or two questions that I'd like to ask. I think it's a fascinating topic and something as a discipline and the industry really has to focus on. So totally agree there. And I personally find the situational leadership. Sorry, that's a different thing. Situational limitations extremely interesting and something I'd love to follow up with. But for now, I see this as being similar to what we heard from Christina. That designing for a specific audience, designing for women, or designing for accessibility actually makes products better for everyone. And I wonder how you change the biases that you have maybe in engineering, maybe in our own discipline, and getting people to understand this phenomenon.
Yeah. So, see, basically, I would say, it's first of all about awareness, right? So the first thing is, you talk about accessibility to everyone, and the first thing which comes is, like it's for developers. The developers are the one who have to work hard and they have to add extra codes. That's how it comes. So the first thing is, bringing that awareness, like what accessibility is, really helps. And second thing which really helps is, when we are doing these studies or analysis, bring people who are not from the UX discipline and let them see how things look. And they may definitely change their, mindset completely, like, okay, we should do it.
This leads me to a kind of follow-up question, and I wonder about how we deal with our own biases as researchers around difficulties with things like lab setup and people with severe cognitive impairments, for example. So we may have our own biases and our own kind of frustrations of trying to deal with that. I mean, I wonder if that's something you've thought about and dealt with.
Definitely, yeah. That is again some sort of situational limitations which we are talking about. So, see, it could be implemented or it could be thought about in any situations and scenarios. So definitely that is one more thing. Like one of the accessibility problem which we were having today was with my presentation, because we were not able to download it. We tried everything possible. So because of that limitation, it was not working.
Cool. Do we have some more questions from the audience? Yes, at the back, please. Anything online?
Yeah, my question was just around, a lot of times the user for accessibility gets forced to an edge case scenario, and we hear, oh, well, that only affects 5% of our potential demographic. How can what you've kind of presented and what you've learned from pushing this help us weight that user as more important than just an edge case?
Right. So, see, this is a really good question, because definitely this happens all the time. Like edge cases are being discounted, like, oh, only 5% people or only 1 or 2% of the people are using it, so let's skip. But then it's not like that. They are also the users. They should get the equal experience using a product like, everyone else. So even in those scenarios where we have really edge cases, we should be thinking about it and pushing for it a lot. So technically, I try to create my like user flows and journeys and try to show how it would look and those kind of things, and it really helps that way. So I would say don't try to compromise just because it is 5% or 2% or something like that, because they are also the users and you are designing for them.
Another question here?
Actually, had much the same question, but from a slightly different perspective. I'm a developer and end up sort of consuming the UX designs. My question is, would you like to address the question of how do you try and make the basic design cover as much as you can. And this is the reality, right? Sometimes you just have to take your basic accessibility. You try to get the design to cover as much as you can, and in some cases, if you're trying to do something a little trickier than usual, then you just have to tear off, do a little bit of extra work to handle the accessibility cases, though, of course, ideally you want as much to be in the basic design as possible. We'd like to address sort of, good strategies to sort of go about this and sort of make sure that no one gets short shrift.
Right. So first of all is, if we start thinking about accessibility as one extra additional work for us, we will never be able to do that. So we have to think about accessibility as part of our design. So when we do that, so let's say when you are designing and thinking about color contrast, or let's say when you are designing your style guides and thinking about colors. So during that point, think about how would people who have some sort of vision related issues or color blindness will be able to use it. And so when you're choosing your colors, so you're already choosing it for everyone, including people who have some sort of disabilities. Or also about the situations like, okay, when I'm trying to use this color in, bright sunlight, will it still look good, or will it be perceived enough? Those kind of things. Same thing goes with the design and layout. So when I'm designing the layout, I have to think about it. Like, okay, how about the proximity of buttons? How does the entire thing look like? Will it usable and accessible with one hand if I'm just driving and trying to use it? Still it is working or not, and those kind of stuffs. So you have to think about it. So as I mentioned, when you're thinking about your journeys and flows, these things could be covered right in the beginning rather than thinking about it as an edge case or, something like, oh, we never thought about it, and those kind of things. So, it can uncover all these scenarios.
Great. We've got one more question. Time for one last question.
Hi, I've done a lot of accessibility work, and very often I'm doing it at the end as a designer or as a developer, and I have to make things accessible that could have been done in the beginning. I'm going to say it's much more systemic, where you want the content creators to be able to design a way for them to be able to gather the information that can then become more accessible, that you can implement if you're creating an app that you want to be accessible, find ways to gather that information back from those users that can then be fed back, create accessibility. It's keeping that flexibility from and working with other disciplines as well as designers, thinking, well, how are we going to do this? Well, I think you have to create an ecosystem that is always thinking of accessibility.
Yeah. Well, Shyamala, thank you so much. Great talk. Thank you.